All right, I got my game fuel. I've got my Alienware URL and the Alienware computer in the back. And so this is my way of saying that this video is sponsored. But I have to issue a mea culpa. You can Google it. It basically means fuck up because I fucked this video up yesterday. I got some of the data wrong or mixed up between some of the information that was given me. There was a mix up between total payroll that for some teams that includes, Coach Academy, etc., and LCS payroll, which is limited just to the players. This list is supposed to only be LCS payroll, including the players, besides the data that I give at the end. So we have to reshoot the first half of it. I had to take the other one down. I apologize to the teams who were incorrectly ranked previously. That's one of the downsides, unfortunately, of being a solo act, is that it's difficult to have somebody check these numbers. So occasionally mess-ups do happen. Thank you to the person who did reach out to me about that to point it out. And look, I'm going to lesson learned. I will redouble my efforts to make sure that everything that comes out on this channel is as possibly accurate as it can be based off of what my sources are telling me. So without further ado, this is a video which you might have seen me do in the past couple of years. This is the third time I'm doing this video. It is the Travis Gafford salary efficiency ranking list of the LCS teams based off of their performance. What does that mean? Well, basically, through my sources, I find out team player salary information. So basically how much a team is spending in total on their LCS roster, not including coaches, not including other stuff. I then take that number and I divide it by the number of wins that they get in the spring split. That doesn't include playoffs. It doesn't include MSI. Sometimes people think that I should include that information. I think this is the best way of ranking them because you have everybody that has played the same amount of games. If you want to give, Cloud9 a bonus for winning spring and MSI, you want to put an asterisk next to their number, that's fine. It's the system I've decided to do, and if somebody wants to find this information and put out a different list, more power to them. Anyway, the other thing I want to let you know is that this does not include buyouts. So the teams that spend a lot of money on buyouts, that would obviously change some of the calculations some. It doesn't include equity if teams have granted equity to their players. I don't even know if anybody in the LCS currently has equity, but whatever. It wouldn't include it if it did. And then it does also not include conditional bonuses. So, for instance, a team might say, like, hey, we're going to give you 20 grand extra if you win spring split. They might say that to a player or multiple players, whatever, summer split, etc. That's how that works. Also, this data is all based off of spring data. So, obviously, there's been some roster changes and stuff. This is not going to reflect that, but spring data for spring performance, I think we're good there. All right. So without further ado, I'm also going to show you here. We did this joke in the original version of this video. The rankings of the teams from last year, how I rank them on the list, so that you can kind of use this as reference, and I'll use it as reference as we're going through it. All right. Finally, we can get into this. Wait. One more thing. Subscribe, because we're going to be doing a bunch of other stuff on the channel this week. That's going to be really interesting. You don't want to miss it. Dignitas is your most efficient team of Spring Split. We're doing this in reverse compared to last year, where I didn't work from the bottom up, because I think it's more interesting this year. Dignitas is the most efficient team, and this is part of the reason why I thought that they deserved more credit than their coaching staff got. So they've tied for 4th in the Spring Split, with 11 wins, 7 losses, alongside 100 Thieves. And yet, they were not by any means a expensive team. They were a full North American team, cue the McDonald's memes, and their coaches were able to bring them there. So actually, I didn't have this data at the time, but I knew that they were obviously a budget roster, and the fact that they were able to do so well in a situation where, in fact, now that I'm doing a new version of this video, I can show you the placings, but where people thought they were going to be ranking at the start of the split, I think around lock-in or whatever, versus where they ended up. So you can see, they ended up tied for 4th. That's pretty good. Pretty good. And I think they had a really great split. Obviously, playoffs, whatever. All right. Next up is IMT. All right, IMT number 2 on the list. Last year, they were ranked 5th, so they've moved up. Congratulations to IMT. This is one of the fun things about this list is like IMT placed 7th with 7 wins. Obviously not the place that you want to be, but if you are getting, if you are placing 7th, if you're placing towards the bottom, you're not doing great. You probably want to be higher on this list because at the very least, you're not paying that much money compared to some of the other teams, and that allows you to rank higher. If you, let's say if you're like the team owner, you're running this, you're playing some sort of I don't know, app-based version of LCS team ownership. So IMT number 2, FlyQuest. Okay, this is one of the places where I really need to apologize to FlyQuest because yesterday, because of the incorrect data, I had them near the bottom. They are not near the bottom. They are actually 3rd because of the difference in the way that the data works. So congratulations to FlyQuest. They, let's see, in the regular split, they've finished 8th with 6 wins. And so you can kind of see a correlation here where, you know, the teams that are placing higher are teams that are not spending as much money. Now, FlyQuest had off-season rumored to have some pretty big buyouts for Cloud9 players, so take that as you will, but they do place 3rd here. Number 4, 100 Thieves, also a team I need to apologize because they were pretty low on yesterday's flawed rankings. They actually, last year, where were they last year? They were, hang on, I should have this in front of me, I don't. They were 4th last year, so ironically in the exact same place as they were last year. So they actually tied for 4th. They're 4th across the board because they were 4th last year. They placed 4th in the efficiency rankings, and then they tied for 4th in the performance with 11 wins, just like Dignitas. So, again, these are the types of things where you can go, if you're a team owner and you have to talk to investors or GM or coach or something, you have to talk to your leadership saying like, yeah, rankings were not, or performance was not where we want it to be, but this is, clearly we are optimal, or at the top half of optimal. Golden Guardians. Okay, so Golden Guardians had a pretty dramatic fall from last year. So Golden Guardians last year was ranked 1st on this list when I did it on May 31st, 2021. Oh, no, sorry. That was when I released this video. When I did it in May 2020, Golden Guardians were ranked 1st on this last year. They've had a pretty dramatic fall, which is unfortunate for them because I think they are also spending significantly less than they did last year. Maybe not significantly, but they're spending less. And just because they performed so poorly, finishing the split with only 3 wins in 10th place, that's a tough spot to be in. So, yeah, a lot of work to be done over at Golden Guardians. That's one of the funny things about this is like, you don't need that. If you're not spending that much, you don't need that many wins to move up this list. So we'll see what they can do in summer. Team Liquid. Team Liquid is number 6. Last year, they were 9th. I think part of the difference here is, if you recall, last year they had a pretty shitty spring split. That was like the double if tactical stuff. Brox's visa was delayed or whatever. So, excuse me. They are now also not the top spender in the league anymore. They previously were there, but they are no longer there. Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses last year were 6th. They've moved down to the 7th place position on this after what was an interesting performance. They had 10 wins. They got 6th place in the spring split this year, and that brought them to this position. Not much more to say about EG. I mean, I think they're spending middle of the pack, and they're placing relatively middle of the pack. So, yeah. 7th in this. Did I say something else? 7th. TSM. TSM is your 8th place team on this. Okay, so TSM got tied for 2nd with TL at 12 wins. So if you're doing a little bit of math people out there, you can compare the TL versus the TSM numbers and make some interesting implications about how much either of them are spending based on the fact that they place differently with the same number of wins. This shouldn't necessarily be a surprise to people because Andy, I think Andy came on Hotline League during the off season and was talking about how he was spending a lot of money. Obviously, all the Sword Art information has come out as well. So, you know, even when you have a great split, you're 1 game away from tying the 1st place position. with 13 wins versus 12, you can place pretty poorly on here. Not poorly. You can place lower on the efficiency, because that's the thing. Not everybody will think this is poor, because the data necessarily is perhaps less relevant to the people who just want to perform. They want results at any cost. Unfortunately, that can't be said for CLG. CLG, 5 wins, the 9th place team, placing 9th in the rankings on efficiency. That's a tough one. And what's interesting, I don't know, I have some congestion. TSM and CLG, they're very, very close in their cost per win number calculation when I brought this out. Very, very close. Like if the wins had just been slightly different or the costs had been slightly different, I think you would have seen them swap positions. But you have CLG, really an efficient team, placing second to last. And as I've said CLG, by the way, that also means you've figured out who the last team is, and that's C9. C9, they won Spring Split. They won the Spring Split tournament, which is called Mid-Season Showdown. Then they did not win MSI, but they did go to MSI. And you can see how much it cost them to achieve all that by the fact that they won more games than anybody and yet have the lowest efficiency. It just means they had to spend the most money out of any of these teams to get the wins that they got. Each win that they bought was quite pricey. So that's the rankings, everybody. I think it's pretty interesting. Again, like, it's not meant to be, the C9 fans should be angry their team is at the bottom. That's not really, in my opinion, the interpretation of this data or what's meant by it. It's more just, I think it's an interesting chart on if you were told to pay the lowest per win, Dig would be at the top. If you were told to win Spring Split, go to MSI, you can see the cost of that in the, where is it? Somewhere around here. You can see the cost of that in the C9 performance here. So Dig at the top, C9 at the bottom. Again, apologies for the misstep, but we have issued this. There's some extra data that I put in the previous video that I'm just going to slap on the back here. So take it away, Travis, from a day ago. Okay, some other fun facts from some of the data that I was able to get. Team Liquid is now only the 3rd highest paying team. So people, Team Liquid previously had the reputation of being the team that paid the most. I think Andy Din was on Hotline League last year, and during the offseason, he was talking about how like he went crazy and spending, and obviously all the stuff came out about Sword Art, and so Team Liquid no longer the biggest spender. TSM has the highest paid coaching staff, which is a fun, interesting fact. I mean, their coaching staff obviously has some pretty good value even beyond the coaching, because of one particular individual who can help be like a face for that org. But that's how you end up in that situation. Dignitas, who secured the most wins, or like the most efficiency on the list, they have the lowest paid coaching staff. So I don't know. Again, I think their coaching staff killed it in Spring Split based off of the roster that they built. So I think that's interesting. Cloud9, I believe previously, I'd have to go check my other video. You can go check my other video. I'll link it at the end. They have the highest academy payroll, and I think they did last year as well. So they continue to just invest a ton into academy. Meanwhile, Dignitas has the lowest paid academy payroll. So, and then finally, a very interesting fact is the highest paying team is paying over 5 times what the lowest paying team is paying in payroll. So you have more than a 5x difference between the lowest spending team and the highest spending team. I'll talk on Hotline League and Rift Reaction this week with Mark and Emily respectively on like what the implications are of that. But it is a very crazy situation where you have that much of a difference. And it's, obviously it's not just the bottom and the top, but like, second and ninth, and there's a pretty big spread across the league, and it shows, I think, oftentimes in the performance, but sometimes in other places you have a team that's spending a lot and just not getting the results they want. So anyway, that is the rankings for this year. Again, please subscribe. We got some cool data that's going to be hitting the channel. Some other videos, kind of like this one, hopefully hitting before the start of LCS. And then when LCS starts, we'll get back into the swing of things. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Hello, if you're watching this outro and you're wondering why I'm fixing my hair, it's because I want to look good for June 1st. That's when Alienware is doing their Alienware update on Twitch. You can check it out. You go check out their socials. You'll see all this information. But they're showing you some wonderful new updates, some new information on what's going on over at Alienware, and you don't want to miss it. June 1st, twitch.tv/Alienware. Be there or be square. Is that a thing people still say?